Right. Hello, everyone. There's a slow entry of participants being let into the webinar. Bear with us as we do the webinar admin. If I could ask in the interim that you please keep your microphones off, that would be useful just in terms of sound effects. You're welcome to have your video on or off. I see we have some familiar faces in the process of joining us. So no problem if you want to keep your video on to see each other. I think the blockchain and the digital community is a big but small one once we all get to know each other. Right. I will introduce myself in the interim. My name is Caitlin Nash, and I'm the founder of an innovation engagement agency called Loudhailer. I'm also a very proud affiliate to the Blockchain Research Institute Africa, which has been spearheaded by Standard Bank on the continent and originates from the founding organization in Canada. We're very much looking forward to today to talk about blockchain in Africa, and primarily to talk about the world's leading organization, the Blockchain Research Institute, founded by Don Tapscott, who is on the webinar with us today. I think it is very exciting to be able to have this African-focused webinar with such a seasoned leader in the blockchain space. Right, ahead of us kicking off, I'd like to ask everyone in the chat function, please. Webinars are always a fantastic opportunity to network, even though we are behind our screens. Please feel free to introduce who you are, the organization you're joining from, and drop your LinkedIn profile in the chat function. I see David, I know that you're joining us from PwC. Glad to have you on the call. I recognize some familiar faces as they were busy joining. Mitch, lovely to have you here. We saw Mitch Rankin down at the CVVC event in Cape Town not so long ago. Monica Singer, wonderful to have you here. Anton from Urbian. Right. Monica from Consensus, yes, lovely. Okay, I see some investment firms joining us. Grey Swan, wonderful to have you here. It's always fascinating how blockchain permeates all the different industries. And I think that's what makes it such a transformative technology. Right, I think let us kick off. Please carry on introducing yourselves, and I will introduce the order of the afternoon. For those joining us from Canada, I know that it's a good morning to you. So to Don and his team from the Blockchain Research Institute, good morning and welcome to the African sunshine this side, even though you are probably sitting in the miserable cold. And to those who are joining from Africa, good afternoon. We've got the morning slot and the after lunch slot, but it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a very energizing one. Right, our order of the afternoon, we only have 1 hour together, and we're very privileged that Don Tapscott has allocated time to talk directly to us. We are going to allocate Don half an hour to talk and tell us all about his journey, how he got into blockchain, and primarily, what is the Blockchain Research Institute and what is it doing? And why is it this wonderful, amazing, world-class institution that we now have access to? After that, I am going to hand over to Ian Putter, who is the head of the Blockchain Center of Excellence for Standard Bank. Many of you may or may not know Standard Bank, but here on the continent, Standard Bank is well known as one of the biggest banks across Africa, really focused on driving growth for the continent. So Ian, welcome to you, and Don, welcome to you. In the background, we are always very lucky to have a tech guru supporting us. Our tech guru behind the scenes, who is faceless but not nameless, is Dylan Foree. So if at any point you hear us asking a faceless Dylan to help out with the tech, you'll know that he is our support behind the scenes. Right, with no further ados, I am going to allow the man himself, Don Tapscott, to introduce himself and his organization to us. Don, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks very much, Caitlin, and I'm very pleased to do this. And our partnership with Standard Bank is a very strategic and important partnership for us. And we're also very excited about Africa. for lots of reasons that others are excited about Africa, but also because of some new reasons, which I'd like to explain to you. This is a time of a very profound change. And coming out of the pandemic, many of our institutions have been challenged. We are seeing with searing clarity weaknesses in our supply chains. I mean, how can it be in 2022 in the United States, we can't get baby food to babies? It's quite extraordinary. Our systems for health data have been very weak. We can't aggregate data together because it's all non-standardized and buried in various silos. And all of this, plus more, creates a demand pull for change. There's also a technology push that's coming out of the pandemic. The pandemic has sped up the digital age by years and even centuries or decades. And we're shopping online, we're learning online, we're working online, we're having webinars online. I have to tell you, I'd rather be in Africa right now, and I am looking forward to coming to Africa to do a bunch of these sessions face to face. But we're exercising online, we're taking care of with Pelotons, we're taking care of our health online, we're ordering taxis online, and this is creating a push for thinking more about technology. Simultaneous with that, there's the growth of something very, very important, and that's a second era of the digital age. Now, let me explain that idea. A little background about me to do that. I started writing books back in the 1980s. My first two books were in the 80s. They were books that nobody read. I think my mother bought most of the copies. Studies in Bad Timing. But in the early 90s, I started writing bestsellers, and Paradigm Shift in 93, which is obviously a big book. And then The Digital Economy was the first bestseller about the web in 94. And 25 years later, 20 years later, I was asked to write the anniversary edition of The Digital Economy, because the word 20 years later was bigger than when I first invented it in 94, and it's part of the vernacular. And that was viewed by my publisher as sort of a seminal book. So I had to think about, well, where have we been and where are we going? And I came to this conclusion that we've been through a first era of the digital age: mainframes, minis, PCs, the internet, the web, the mobile web, social media, the cloud, big data. And now we're entering a second era where we have these extraordinary technologies that can learn, do things that they weren't programmed to do, AI, machine. We have technology, not just in our hands, but billions and trillions of inert objects in the physical world that become animated, become smart communicating device, and soon doing transactions. We've got a big drive now for virtual worlds, and the metaverse is an idea whose time has finally come. And I came to a kind of a surprising conclusion that the foundational technology for this second era would in fact be the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies or blockchain. And the reason is, to us, this is the operating system for the next period of economic development and civilization. And that's a big statement. So let me try and quickly defend that and then move along. We'd like to think of blockchain as a second era of the internet. For decades, we've had an internet of information, but if I send you some information, an email, a PDF of this deck, I'm actually not sending you the information, I'm sending you a copy, and that works great for information. But when it comes to things that really matter to Africa, assets, things of value like money or securities or intellectual property or the data in our identity, even physical assets like diamonds, oil, but also cultural assets, art, music, votes and assets, something of value belonging to somebody. When it comes to assets, copying them is either not feasible, can't copy a barrel of oil, but it's also not desirable to copy somebody's assets. You don't want someone copying your vote or your identity. And if I send you $1,000, it's really important that I don't still have the money, right? So cryptographers have called this the double spend problem for a long time. And the way we manage this problem is through intermediaries, banks, stock exchanges, transfer agents, SWIFT, credit card companies, social media companies, others perform all of the business and transaction logic for every type of commerce. They identify the person you are in, they identify the asset, they clear and settle transactions, they keep records, and overall they've done a pretty good job. But there are growing problems. They have technology challenges, these middlemen. They're based on central servers that can be hacked. We have still been unable to bring 1 billion people into the global economy. Now, in fairness to the banks, a lot of these people, most of them don't have an identity, but still that's a problem. Often these middlemen charge too much. Why should it, and take too long to do things? Why should it take 4 to 7 days for a physician in Toronto to send money to her mom in Nigeria? And why should she be charged 12% by Western Union? And there are many other challenges. A big one is that these intermediaries, especially a new species of business called digital conglomerates, capture our data. And this is the asset class of the digital age. We create it, they capture it. So we can't use it to plan our lives. We can't monetize it. It's estimated there are 1.5 billion people in the world that could double their income if they could sell their own data. But most important, our privacy is being undermined, and privacy is the foundation of freedom. So there are growing challenges. What if there were not just an internet of information? What if there were an internet of value? Or what if the web, another way of thinking of it, went into a third era? First web was the read web. We watch websites. The second web was the read-write web. You could take action, make a Wikipedia entry or go onto social media. The third web, or the second era of the internet, is the read, write, own web. What if there were a global distributed ledger where anything of value, from money to securities to music to a vote, could be managed, stored, transacted peer-to-peer? Well, this would be an extraordinary thing. And of course, that's enter Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008. Satoshi's cracked the double spend problem. And the reason that this is significant is not because of Bitcoin. It's because now the underlying technology or classes of this technology mean that for the first time in human history, people can transact, they can manage, store, communicate value peer-to-peer, and trust is not achieved necessarily by an intermediary. It's achieved by cryptography and collaboration and some clever code. So that's just a bit of a background on how we think about it. These are more secure platforms too. I had a great analogy, I thought, on why blockchains were so secure, but a late night comedian named John Oliver had some fun with my analogy. So just a kind of a mid-afternoon wake up, I'll show you that clip so you'll see why I don't use it anymore.
And because of the complicated process the network uses to verify records, it is very secure. Now relax, I'm not going to get into what that process is or how it works, but I will share a really helpful, really dumb metaphor for why it is safe.
The way I like to think of it is that a blockchain is a highly processed thing, sort of like a chicken McNugget. And if you wanted to hack it, it'd be like turning a chicken McNugget back into a chicken. Now, someday someone will be able to do that, but for now, it's going to be tough.
Hold on, that is an absolutely horrible thought. So why is that reporter so happy about the idea? Because if anyone ever figures out how to turn a chicken McNugget back into a chicken, that chicken is going to be up. He's going to spend the rest of his life suffering from PTSD and writing haunting poetry about the experience. The things I saw, buck, buck, buckaw. My body is whole, but what of my soul?
My body is whole, but what of my soul? So you can see why I don't use the analogy anymore. So I still think it's a good one. Email was the first app of the Internet of Value. Bitcoin was of information. Email was the first app of the Internet of Information. Bitcoin was the first app of the Internet of Value. But then the web came along, and we saw the rise of general purpose platforms that could build any app. So that's happened too with the Internet of Value, Hyperledger, Ethereum, and now we have these extraordinary new platforms. Solana is a scalable layer 1 blockchain platform like Ethereum, Polkadot, along with Cosmos, is a leading interoperability program that's linking blockchains together. Polygon, a layer 2 scaling solution to Ethereum. And these are the future. It's these exciting new platforms. So this is a big deal. Now, flashback over 6 years, I got lucky with the timing on this book and also with my co-author, Alex, and it did become the big book on blockchain globally. And at the time, we said this would bring about some very profound changes. Flash forward to today, this is happening. Now, at the BRI, we're studying 14 different industries. These are 7 of them. And I was just traveling through the Mideast, and it happens that these are the 7 I was talking about. Financial services, transforming supply chains, healthcare, energy and climate, property rights, enabling us to recapture our data and have a self-sovereign identity, and the transformation of government. So when Alex and I come to Africa, and we can do this by webinar too, we'll be talking about all of these. Today, I don't have time, so I'll just mention one of them, which is financial services, because Standard Bank is our host. So first of all, money is becoming digitized. We have self-organizing currencies like Bitcoin. There are corporate currencies like Facebook launched Libra and then called it Diem, and it pretty much failed. Not because it was a bad idea. Zuckerberg wanted to send money around the world as easy as a text message, but because everybody dislikes Facebook. So the messenger was the wrong messenger. Then we have central bank digital currencies, which are fiat currencies that become digitized. And there's an awful lot of talk and writing about this, and I'm happy to talk about it in the question period if you want. But there's a lot of concern that China is really the leader, and it's rolling out its central bank digital currency across Southeast Asia into Africa along One Belt, One Road, linking Hong Kong and Rotterdam. If they do that, they'll become the currency of record. Mark Carney, former head of the Bank of England, good Canadian, he argued that maybe we should go back to what Keynes wanted in 1944, which is to have a global synthetic digital currency where all these other currencies rolled up into it. But this is certainly a big topic. However, money is just one part of the financial system. This is a complicated system, but it does some very simple things. Storing value used to be in safes, moving value, because they move value, they get to lend value, they get to fund, so venture capital, investment banking, hedge funds, mutual funds, exchanging value, creating markets, stock markets, ensuring value and managing risk, property and casualty, life insurance, reinsurers, analyzing values, a big industry that does that, accounting for and auditing value, the big audit companies, and overall authenticating identity and the identity of people and assets. Now, in theory, every one of these things can be done by software. Now, that's not going to happen because the banks are smart and they're re-intermediating, creating new value. But this is called DeFi. And there's lots of talk about fintech, but fintech is just the tip of the iceberg, because DeFi is really the digitization of all these things that happen with a bank. And this is one of the fastest growing industries ever. I just want to make one more point on this, that when people talk about assets, they think of crypto assets, they think about currencies. Well, actually, currencies are one type of digital asset, but there are many more. You have protocol tokens. ETH is a token that enables smart contracts. On Ether, it's not a currency. You have governance tokens that enable people on a decentralized platform to have a decision in how things are made. That leads to whole new models of how we orchestrate capability in society, distributed autonomous enterprises, as we call them in the book, or decentralized autonomous organizations as they've become known. They're non-fungible tokens. A dollar is a dollar. The Mona Lisa, however, is not fungible with any other Mona Lisa because there aren't any. So they represent things which are non-fungible. Exchange tokens, securities tokens, probably the biggest one. You'll see token generation events for billions of dollars, and these have already occurred actually, where people are not buying stock, they're investing in a token that represents a share in the company. So there are many other types of these things, natural asset tokens and so on. So that's a quick tour through one of a bunch of industries. One other point here is that this is not all about business. It's about growth, and it's about solving problems. And you think about Africa, the opportunity here is just enormous. Big problems have already been solved. Conflict diamonds, it's the Kimberley process and a blockchain platform called Everledger that pretty much have that under control. But financial inclusion, we can bring hundreds of millions of people into the economy overnight if we want to. Land titles in the developing world are not secure. You can solve the problem of climate change by tokenizing carbon credits and creating real markets for carbon. Great initiatives underway on oceans and fisheries, capturing our self-sovereign identities, creating a new era of prosperity. Rather than the redistribution of wealth, we can pre-distribute wealth by making the economy more democratic through ensuring that the creators of value are fairly compensated, by creating a new halcyon era of entrepreneurship. And we can help build better government. Finally, I was in Dubai last week. 30% of all government operations are running on blockchains. And of course, there's a crisis of legitimacy of democracy in many countries. The United States is exhibit 1. So this is a time of extraordinary opportunity. Now, there are lots of criticisms. All of these criticisms that I've heard, you have to put them in bucket number 1 or bucket number 2. Bucket number 1 is reasons why blockchain is a bad idea and we shouldn't do it. Bucket number 2 is implementation challenges. And everything that I've ever seen goes in bucket number 2. Uses energy. Well, you know what? Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. It's a proof of work model. But we're moving away from proof of work to proof of stake and other models that use virtually no energy compared to the current system. And you can buy a green Bitcoin. The 9-point Bitcoin green ETF is available in Toronto, launched by a very clever person called Alex Tapscott. Technology is immature. You know what? 1994, the web was immature too. People told me, I'm never going to use that. It's too hard to use. Criminals can use it. Well, they do. 15 basis points, 15% of 1% of all Bitcoin transactions are criminal. That's our estimate. But there is a currency that criminals like a lot better. It's called cash. It's the foundation of organized crime, the drug industry, tax evasion, and so on. In fact, smart law enforcement loves crypto because it leaves metadata. And finally, there's this just general view that this is all bad. You have to look at it. Is it a bubble? Well, we're going through the equivalent of the dot-com crash right now. And Bitcoin was a bubble, and it crashed down to 300 previously, and then it crashed to 3,000, and then it crashed to 30,000. A lot of crashes here. But overall, these assets are going up. So to get to the BRI, what does this mean for Africa? Well, Silicon Valley was the center of the first era. Where's the second era going to be? And Africa is this continent of boundless resource of growing talent, high birth rates, and there are opportunities to build global centers. But more important, this is not just a center or a sector, it's the foundation of all sectors. So there cannot be prosperity without embracing the second era of the digital age. But to do that, we need to achieve leadership. And this is a new paradigm. And when you get a new paradigm, you know, these things are received badly by coolness. And leadership needs to be found, which gets us to the BRI. We created the BRI in order to solve this problem, to fill the gap between blockchain's potential and its actual deployment. And we decided to partner with Standard Bank because we were stunned and struck so positively by the powerful leadership that was coming from that company at all levels, right up to the CEO, the actual chairman of the board and board of directors. And we've spent time with the executive committee and the board. And there's an enormous curiosity and I would say a thirst for finding solutions that can help solve big problems in Africa. These are people who want to live a consequential life, not just make money. And it's so inspiring for us. We created the BRI over 5 years ago, and we're doing or have done 130 projects. Each project is a research project, and we create a big report. This is 5 years old, The Token Economy by Michael Casey, an infographic to make it accessible, and a video about me. These research deliverables, there are 400 of them now, represent the biggest independent body of know-how about how to do blockchain. And this is one that we created for Biden-Harris on rethinking technology strategy in the United States. And companies, governments join the BRI. They pay a significant fee to do that. But for that, they get millions of dollars of research. They also get to customize the research. So everyone gets to pick a specific project that they're interested in, and we put a team on it, and we do that project. We're not just passively doing research, though. We're also actively building ecosystems. And the research and this body of knowledge drives that and helps us create strong ecosystems wherever we go. You know, FedEx said to us that, it was actually Fred Smith said this on the main stage of Consensus, said it to me in an interview. It's the CEO, a founder of FedEx. And he said, back in the day, you figure out something like a chain of custody and should have that. And then he thinks, we'll build an IT system, they build it out, they stick their logo on it, they go to market, they dominate the industry for decades. He says you can't do that today because we want to rebuild the logistics system and supply chains, but we can't do it by ourselves. We need to have partners. So we've been working with them to help build up BITA, Blockchain and Transportation Alliance, to help achieve standards to transform these industries. We've also developed the most extensive management courses on blockchain. These are done through Coursera, the largest online platform, and INSEAD, one of the top business schools in the world outside of Paris. And we spent over $1 million developing these courses. They're rated very high by Coursera, top 15%. And once you've taken these courses, you really understand about blockchain. But more important, the final part of every course is a practicum where you need to come up with use cases in your industry. This is, we've got 250,000 people taking these courses, so it's pretty exciting. We're also as part of building ecosystems, we have all member summits. Ian and others from around the world were just in Toronto for an all-member executive level meeting that occurred a few weeks ago. And this is important now the pandemic is ending, that we meet face to face. And you're all invited to attend our big event in November 8th, 9th, and that will be in Toronto. We did this physically in 2019, had 1,200 executives. We went online and it was pretty good, but not great, honestly. We had 260 speakers, but it's just not the same. So come Toronto, we're going to learn a lot. We'll have the world's top thinkers there, and we're going to have a lot of fun too. I think my band is going to be playing, so that should be pretty interesting. We also have the Blockchain Transformation Awards, and these are the big awards in business, and we hope that lots of companies in Africa will be submitting. We'll have a big black tie gala in November to give out those awards. So to close then, blockchain is a global opportunity, and the second era is a global opportunity. The Web3 is a global opportunity. And so we're growing internationally. And I'm personally traveling around the world to all of these locations. And there's just so much exciting stuff happening. We're quite determined to help everywhere. And I must say, I'm so excited about Africa. We're also trying to extend the reach of our research. All of these books are out now. And today, coming off the press, literally today, is The Ink is Wet, Digital Asset Revolution. That's up on Amazon now for pre-order. And you can, and that will, Amazon will be shipping on July the 11th. So, and these are all just wonderful books. And I think they're being influential. We're trying to be influential in other ways too, bringing clarity to the world. I just did 8 countries in Europe before Christmas. Several were for HSM. They have thousands of people at their events. This was 19,000 people. I was the opener. Barack Obama closed it. This is the EU. Radio City Music Hall. Hey, I'm not the Rockettes, but I did get a standing ovation. And when we come to Africa, we'd like to meet with government leaders too, because policy is a huge challenge going forward. We need to create a regulatory environment. So to close, we asked people for the first round of our effort, what did you get out of it? And these are the kinds of things that they said. You know, you saved us a couple of years in figuring out what to do, and you helped keep us out of trouble by telling us what to not do. We built these great relationships with others. Thank you for influencing the regulatory environment. The education work was transformative. We've heard stuff like that, not in all cases, but in some. Save time and resources, understand the implications for every C-suite member. So it's not just the strategy of the technology people. This affects everything. It affects marketing, it affects HR, and so on. And we help companies build their ecosystems, and people were thankful for that. So that's the BRI. And I'd like to turn it back now to our friends in Africa, who will talk about what we're doing concretely there. Just to close, can you do this? You know, the challenges in Africa are so monumental, but with that are monumental opportunities. And, you know, people say, that, actually, I've been called a futurist. I don't like that at all, because I'm of the theory or the school that the future is not something to be predicted. The future is something to be achieved. And this technology is not going to solve any problems. People solve problems. But the first era of the digital age created all kinds of good things, and it created some bad things too. We have a fragmentation of public discourse. You know, we have a bifurcation of wealth that you can link back to technology. And this new era, it's not going to fix any of that. But what it does is it gives us another kick at the can, another opportunity to rewrite the economic grid and the old order of things for the better, but only if we will it. So we'll have a little time for question at the end. I look forward to chatting with you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Don. I must say that I realize as the months have passed working with the BRI, how particularly fortunate I was that the very first time I learned about blockchain and the first person who taught me about blockchain was Don Tapscott himself. So Don, thank you so much. I think, 2 years ago when my journey started with the BRI, I was only at the very beginning of understanding the transformative power of blockchain. And certainly with every month that's passed, it's become clearer and clearer what a radical opportunity it is for the continent. So for many of us on the call, just a quick reminder, if you joined during the presentation, please feel free in the chat to put in your LinkedIn profile. It's an opportunity for us to continue building our community. Please make sure that you mention where you're from, your organization, perhaps who you are. I'm going to give Ian Patter an opportunity in a moment, but for everyone on the call, if you have questions for Don or questions for Ian, feel free to start typing them up in the chat function and we'll read them out later for some comments. Right, Ian Patter, who is the head of the Center of Excellence for the Blockchain Division at Standard Bank. Ian is not just that. In fact, I feel, like Don mentioned, a webinar can never do justice to that sense of passion and commitment. And Ian has to be one of the most passionate blockchain, what do we call you, Ian? Transformers on the continent. And I think Standard Bank is really fortunate to have you. And we're really fortunate that you've been able to bring your relationship with BRI to the continent. I mean, I'm looking at the participants who are here, and we've certainly got the right people in the room. And Don talking about how the future is going to be achieved, not going to be predicted. It only takes a couple of us who are really committed to get the momentum going. So Ian, that being said, I'd love to hand over to you because I know BRI Africa has got this tremendous opportunity ahead of us. The scope is enormous in terms of 55 countries across Africa. I know Hamza mentioned now, what about Morocco BRI? And I think that's certainly the vision, is to have this connected community jointly working on blockchain use cases, building our community and creating Africa-specific research. So Ian, I'm going to hand over to you. I would love to hear your journey, your passion, and then your vision as it relates to BRI Africa.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. I'm also going to keep it fairly short to make sure that Don gets to answer some questions, and we're really looking forward to hosting Don in South Africa and in Africa actually very, very soon. I'm going to start talking about BRI Africa. Very passionate. When I met Don and the guys, Don and Alex, a while ago, the first book I ever read was The Blockchain Revolution. So that for me made me understand actually what the potential is, to recognize the potential of blockchain, and specifically for Africa. So I'm going to give a very quick blended message about BRI Africa, what we intend to do, and what we're actually doing at the moment with BRI Africa, with lots of support. You've seen Don's world map. We get support now from Asia, Europe, Canada, all over. It's a fantastic team, because blockchain at the end of the day is collaborative technology. And a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, if you go through the basics of what a blockchain is, and if you look at the consent, Don mentioned a few different types of blockchains, and there are new ones starting. But what we want to do with BRI Africa, firstly, is to bring understanding across the continent. So to enable us to mobilize blockchain for good, to enable people to not know, not education, but to understand blockchain, to understand the decentralized economy. And what we want to do by the community that we're busy creating, which is people at all levels across all African countries connected to that whole world map of people to work together to make a difference. And I think that is the essence of BRI Africa. It's a community. And that community will enable the societies in Africa to work together and to create solutions, to recognize and to fulfill that potential of blockchain, to bring leadership together, to embed this new paradigm shift. A lot of people don't fully understand the paradigm shift that's being introduced, but I'm from a bank, but the opportunity is so wide that it's actually almost unfathomable, that to understand what actually can be done. But I'm going to mention a few things that's happening already in Africa. So I'm not going to repeat anything that Don said, which was a fantastic message, is that it can lower costs significantly. It can democratize a lot of stuff. And when it democratizes things, it enables people to participate without anyone being discriminated against. You can open up networks to people. And for me, one of the key benefits that we're starting to see happening is better governance. So from enabling people to get access to funds that's really meant for them, as opposed to that money going through multiple channels, we're seeing that happen, where at the end of the day, for beneficiaries and donors, things becomes more transparent on a blockchain. And the other thing is communities can start governing their own infrastructure. And you guys are all aware of MicroHab and Standard Bank, where we're growing mushrooms in partnership with MIT. I'm talking on behalf of Carolyn Kirksmith and Standard Bank Group, but that's a fantastic blockchain use case where they work with NASA and MIT to grow mushrooms. The mushrooms, they make, what do you call it? A shake that people can drink. It's got all the protein, so it provides food, very, very cheap food to a lot of people. And you can track and trace the mushrooms from the moment that it's grown. This is obviously applicable to all agricultural use cases. And then you can make that food available to a lot of people. And then the mushrooms are grown into bricks, and every single brick is actually tracked on the blockchain. And then eventually it ends up in houses that are being built for communities. And as these communities are being built, the communities then are enabled to create infrastructure, roads, and medical services are made available to them. So it's built from the ground up. And I think that's the purpose of what we want to do. We want to connect a lot of people to participate in blockchain use cases like this, what people don't realize, if you look at financial markets, I met a very senior crypto CEO earlier today. And what he said to me is, and we all know that that's on that call. If you look at our financial markets today globally, custodial services, corporate actions, accounting, everything is done in different compartments or silos. But what if you put all those things together and it's run seamlessly and it reduces the cost significantly? So I think instead of seeing it as a threat, what BRI has helped us and what we want to do in Africa with all our participants and all our members at the end of the day is to bring that message, but to enable, to some of the messages on Don's slide, people to physically implement use cases. That's why we also partnered with CVVC. We want to look at new startups and we want to facilitate that ecosystem can help us to grow and get use cases in Africa that can drive growth and that can enable communities. And I see I'm nearly at the end of my 10 minutes. So I'm just going to, final comments, just a few other things, is that blockchain also enables people to identify where communities are not reached in Africa. Some of the use cases that we're working on, not as Standard Bank, but as a wider community, but with Standard Bank as a participant, is we see that in some areas people are ignored, not because people want to ignore them, but because no one's aware of them. And as you build these ecosystems out, you start realizing, oh yeah, I haven't touched that point. And then in some cases, there's opportunities created for people to bring medical supplies and food to communities that's been isolated to a certain extent, because there was just no viability in creating a business to distribute things there. And I think that's where I see the potential of blockchain. And I see it making a difference in Africa. Obviously, I've got millions of use cases that I could talk through, but in general, linking back to Don's message, I think that's what we're trying to do with BRI Africa. And obviously connecting Don and all the other guys to everyone in Africa. Thank you very much.
Ian, that's great. Everyone on the call, I haven't seen any questions yet, so now's your time. But what I will say is, I know from the journey we've been on, we're really looking to connect with those drivers within their communities that can get corporates on board, get government on board, get the partners on board we need to make sure that we can access these global resources. You know, BRI has got an absolute wealth of expertise and experience and knowledge available to us. And it's really now for us as a community to mobilize so that we can engage with each other and leverage these resources. There are different ways in which different tiers and different levels in which we are setting up the memberships. We are working with different universities around the continent around how those dynamic relationships around research should look. We're working with governments and research and corporates to fund research around specific challenges. Very recently, some of the professors here who are on a call, we started speaking about some of the ports and some of the blockchain use cases that have been done around port technologies and shipping and logistics and security. You know, as a completely different role, we're also looking at awareness and education. And it's wonderful to see Wesley, who's the editor of Fast Company, on this call. Him and I have had many conversations already talking about how we train journalists and writers to help us communicate this vision to get people on board. So I think our call out in general is to say we are systematically engaging with governments, large-scale corporates, universities, as well as startups and developers and blockchain foundations in the space so that we can bring everyone together and make sure that our memberships are working towards a joint vision in Africa and that we leverage our connections and resources. So the real call out would be, if you're interested, which most of us have spoken or indicated we want to engage, please follow up. Alternatively, we're going to put an email address up in the chat shortly where you can contact Dylan, Faceless Dylan, who can connect you to myself. I operate as steering the partnerships forward, and we can evaluate how best your membership could look within BRI Africa. And then we'd be able to engage Ian and Don and the broader BRI headquarters in terms of bringing those memberships to life. Right, I see there is a question and a couple of comments. Well, we had, hi Caitlin, what are the next steps for us? How can we help? Right, Mitch, I know that you have built some really interesting technologies that can help other startups and organizations get onto blockchain. I think for us, this is a great example of how we've engaged, and for us to set up a follow-up call to specifically identify partnership opportunities. I think Lensu, we've got you here as well. How does one get involved in the BRI? Pretty much the same question, and I'll circle back to Don on that as well, and to Ian. From Alexander, question to Ian: how are you finding education and employee understanding of blockchain and digital assets from a group level, re-Standard Bank? Personally, engaging with various banks, I find usually there is a small group of supporters busy learning around blockchain and digital assets, but it takes time to filter through to the group level. Is this the case in Standard Bank? Well, I suppose we knew someone was going to answer that question. So Ian, why don't you start with the Standard Bank question? And then Don, why don't I circle back to you to talk about how you've set up some of the memberships in terms of the different tiered levels, universities versus corporates versus government. Ian, let's start with you first.
Okay, as Don mentioned, at Standard Bank, it didn't take long. Blockchain actually started from the top at Standard Bank. Don and the BRI presented to our board and to our digital oversight committee. So at a very senior leadership level at Standard Bank, people were very curious. The leaders were very curious. And you find that across the bank as well and across Africa. I've trained with the help of BRI many basically all the boards across Africa for all the countries. And there's training material that's available across the group. We have been a member of BRI for quite a long time. Don, I can't remember when it started. Was it 2019 or 2018? It was before COVID. It's the only thing that I can remember. I can't actually really remember a lot of stuff before 2020. COVID was just too big. It takes up so much of my memory. But from those days, the guys actually had access to the research and the education. We did the Coursera courses. And there is training available in Standard Bank Group as well. So there are lots of use cases in the bank that people are working on, from payments right to blockchain for good. So I hope that answers your question. It's not only a small group. We started as a small group about 5 years ago, but there's quite a community in Standard Bank today. Over to you, Don.
Fantastic. Yes. And Don, just perhaps before you reply, I mean, there's this general question of how do we get involved, but I think there's just another question here, which is how do we build safe, open dialogue for advocacy from the blockchain developer entrepreneurs? They are the warm bodies building the future, whereas there is a strong voice for the regulatory development coming from old school incumbents. Interesting question.
Well, it is, and it sort of gets to the heart of the challenge here, is that, as I said, this is a new paradigm, and I'm allowed to use that word, okay, because I wrote the book, Paradigm Shift. But when these things are mental models, and they put boundaries around what we think they constrain our actions. They're often based on assumptions that are so strong we don't know that they're there. And you know, the Earth is at the center of the universe. That was a paradigm that dominated humanity for millennia. And then Galileo came along, and Galileo had a rough life trying to convince the church that the Earth wasn't at the center of the universe. And he was exonerated actually about 30 years ago. The Pope said, Galileo was right. The world is not flat. We are a planet, and we rotate around the sun. That was like 30 years ago. So it really comes down to leadership, and leadership can come from anywhere. Standard Bank is an exception. Normally, you don't have the top providing leadership and encouragement to this. Normally, it starts somewhere, and eventually it starts to percolate around. And but in every organization, you find your Ian Putter, somebody who gets it. And sometimes they're in a smaller organization outside, a developer, consultant that can influence a larger organization. But the challenge here is a non-trivial one, because you think about just the financial system alone. We have this industry that's the most powerful industry in the world. It has these structures and modus operandi, ways of operating. It has regulatory environments and government laws and regulators and enforcement mechanisms, and it has a view of what is money, and you have central banks that have a view. As all of that is changing. And so we're undertaking a big challenge here to achieve an awakening, and to help people understand not just that this is a big opportunity, but to give them the know-how and help them build the communities to make this happen. That's our mission. So how do you do that? Well, you get involved with the BRI. If you're with a big company, your company should become a member of the BRI. There's a significant financial contribution to do that. And I'll just tell you, I mean, the membership fees, and it's not an annual thing, you join and that's kind of it for a given program. They range from around $25,000 for small companies up to $250,000 for very large companies. And the pricing depends on the organization. But having said that, once you join, you get millions of dollars of research, of value, of services, of educational stuff, of consulting, of custom research, and so on. And it's only through the syndicated model that we can achieve that. Now, joining the BRI as a member is one way to help. You can become on the faculty and work with us in doing research projects. And many of our faculty members are with universities around the world. Companies that are associations can become affiliates. And there's typically a very small fee to do that, but it means that you work with us to help get your members into the BRI, and then we work with you to transform an entire industry. You can also just hire us to give a speech, or to do an executive briefing, either remotely or on site. You can join the courses on Coursera. You don't need to be a member of the BRI to do that. Now, BRI members have many advantages because we provide telephone support for the learner, and we help curate the groups that review the various business case proposals. But you can just go, it's like $70 to join that course per month and have access to millions of dollars of educational material. I think it's the best stuff in the world. So there are many ways to do that. BRI Africa has its own website, and this is just blockchainresearchinstitute.org, which is sort of the central website. You can learn a lot there, but if you're in Africa and you want to get involved with the BRI in Africa, then you should contact Caitlin, Ian, the Loud Hailer folks. You can see that in the chat on how to do that, and find a way to get involved. The other thing I'll mention is that a lot of the research is actually, we've released it to the public under a Creative Commons license with the encouragement and permission of our members like Standard Bank. And so there's all kinds of really good stuff that's available just now on the website. So I'd encourage you to go to blockchainresearchinstitute.org, or Ian can tell you about the African site to get access to that research. Here, let me get this off the screen if I can. All right.
Thanks so much. And I'm looking at our last question because we're already 1 minute past 3. Cho Rimsky has asked, how can we collaborate with BRI to implement use cases such as blockchain for mining, land titles, certificates, etc., with the Cameroon government? So I'm going to be bold enough to answer that myself, which is let's set up a call. Because I think that's where we're at, is that we're the African team, which is let's talk about it. Let's figure out what this project is. Let's figure out what the blockchain need is here. Let's feed back to Don and his team. Let's leverage the knowledge they have for use case in Africa. And that's really where the excitement lies now, is that we are genuinely collaborating and looking how we can apply blockchain for African solutions. Don, is that accurate? I mean, that's pretty much what we do every day, yeah.
That's 100% accurate. Let's have a conversation. And if you get to the point where you're a company and you want to join the BRI, I personally will happily join that conversation and walk you through what is the value proposition.
100%. Right, guys, we're 2 minutes past 3. Let's be respectful of each other's time. I really want to thank you for such a great turnout. I can see the people on the call are people we've already been chatting to, we're working with, we're collaborating with, we're in the pipeline to collaborate with. So I'm tremendously grateful that you took the time. You've heard Don speak directly, you've heard Ian speak directly. It's really laid the strong foundations for us to take our conversations forward. Ian, do you want to say a word of thanks, and then I'll hand over to Don for a final thank you?
Yes, thanks, Caitlin and Dylan for pulling this together. Don, thank you very much for joining. I think it was a great session. Thank you very much for everybody that joined the call.
Thank you. Don, any last words?
You have self-selected as a leader by attending this webinar. And, I just finished a couple of terms as the chancellor of a university. And I used to say to the graduates that, you know, you're heading out into the world, you know, by all means, go be successful, build a great company, make lots of money, have a great family. But unfortunately, the world needs more from you right now, because you, and I'm looking at the people on this screen, are inheriting a world that's very troubled. It's too unequal, it's too unsustainable, it's too conflicted, it's too unjust. And history is really calling you forth to tackle these problems. And my hope is that you have a new set of tools now that can help you live a principled life of consequence, that you can go out and make a difference in the world. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're thrilled to have these partners in Africa that we're working with. And we hope that you'll contact them and that we can find a way to collaborate together. And if we do that, then, you know, maybe this smaller, I don't know, more decentralized world that my grandchildren inherit might actually be a better one. So thanks so much for coming today.
Don, thank you so much. I think that brings me full circle to our very first conversation we had, where blockchain is not a technical conversation, it's one of change. So thank you for those words. Right, everyone, thanks so much for joining on this call. Dylan at theloudhailer.org has left his address. Please just drop him a mail. We can do all our follow-up calls from there. And I'd like to give a small shout out to Sonia and her team at Bitcoin Events for helping us to promote this and connect with you, and stay in touch. We'll be doing a lot more of these webinars going forward. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Joan. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Dylan. And to the broader team, we'll chat to you soon. Goodbye, everyone.